there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction Renovation magazine. Hope everybody's starting the week out on a positive note. It's actually it's pouring down rain here. Once again, it's raining here in Atlanta. It's been kind of wet here, but the Lake Lanier is filling up, and we'll take that water and keep it for the winter and the spring coming up. Because right now, we feed not Alabama, Florida, South Georgia, and Alabama too. I was thinking Tennessee. That's another water war going at the other lake. But anyway, it's been pouring here for the last couple of days, so we're a little wet here in the South, in the LA of the South in Atlanta. But all in all, hope everybody's finished the summer. Labor Day's over. Hopefully you're all back in school up north or wherever you might be. We've been in school here since the beginning of August, so we've got SEC football going on. University of Georgia, #2 in the nation. Atlanta Braves still in first place. Hopefully they'll make the MLB. And the Falcons, well, we call them the ugly birds. They're 0-2, and I don't even think they're going to win a game. It's just yuck. They're ugly. Yeah, they played Tom Brady, the Super Bowl champions, yesterday, and they were really close, and then they just choked in the fourth quarter and threw the game away. So we don't really spend much time on the Falcons. They need a serious renovation in construction terms to get that football team where it needs to be. So, but all in all, you win some, you lose some, you learn, you move on. I'm a sports guy, so it's nice. Some of our teams are doing good and some aren't, but all in all, hey, the fall's coming in. It's kind of a little nippy when I walk my dogs at night or in the morning when we let them out. It's not too hot. The humidity settled down, and when the sun is shining. So, we're enjoying the fall, and soon we'll get those fall colors here up in the mountains. And time to go up to Asheville and see the leaves changing the colors. If you have never done that and you come to the South, Asheville is an awesome place. Actually, Helen, Georgia too. You drive up in the mountains, you can get up in the hills, but oh man, it's beautiful here in the fall when the leaves change. And then a couple good rainstorms and some wind, and they're all gone. So tonight we're talking to someone out in the upper Northwest. His name is John Dentlaw. He is the founder of JLD Cost Consulting. John, say hello to our listeners out there in commercial construction coffee talk land.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, welcome. John's firm, does cost consulting. He gets into, the 3D, 4D, 5D modeling. I'm going to let him talk about all this stuff because he's the expert. And the reason I had John on, because there's been so many, he talks about material costs and that, all the things that go in the projects and project management. And the reason why I wanted to have John on is because there's been so much fluctuation going on over the last couple of months with projects, with shortage of materials. Lumber prices are finally coming down, but just in general, it's been such a roller coaster. And trying to get your projects to be done on time, dealing with those supply issues, let alone keeping your projects on time, on budget, and turning the keys over to the end user or building owner and finishing the punch out list is crucial. Especially in retail, because everybody right now is trying to get their stores done before Thanksgiving for the, Thanksgiving to Christmas shopping season. That hasn't changed. And, of course, we still have the stupid bug there, COVID, hanging out, hindering everything as well. So with that said, John, you got to tell your story. You got to tell us, where you grew up, brothers, sisters, you play any sports, where you went to college and how you ended up where you are today. So with that said, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Yes, a little bit about me. I'm from Northville, Minnesota, and the Vikings didn't have the best weekend this weekend. So
yeah, I feel bad for them. They had two really close games, and they let them both go. The fish was right there at the boat. All they had to do was get it in.
Yeah, it's just not quite working for them there. They need to get some home games. That's the problem. They've been playing on the road. That's my thinking. So I was raised there in a small town where Jesse James was shot. That's Northfield, Minnesota. And it's also where Carleton and St. Olaf colleges are raised. And a little bit for myself, my father and both my grandfather were both in construction for a while. And then uh, as time went on, my father got more into development, and same with my grandfather. And so I had a good understanding of the overall construction growing up my whole life. Then I went to school at Arizona State University, where I studied there in the College of Engineering and construction engineering, and developed a real understanding of all the different design trades that are involved in building them or figuring out the design for a project, and also all the trades that are needed for building construction. And that was also something that was really good within Northville, Minnesota. They had a lot of really good artisan training in the schools, the technical vocational wing of the high school there. And so I was had an exposure to a wide variety of both technical skills and engineering. And so that's how I got involved in construction. After being at Arizona State University, I got recruited to go to Portland, Oregon, and that's where I currently am today, and was involved in commercial construction for 5 years for a large general contracting firm. But I've always had the mindset of wanting to be on my own. And so after 5 years, I started on my own business and
There you
been
go.
in that model ever since. And that's where, the reasoning that I went there is because I was working on a project, and the project was, I came to the project, to the construction site with my own computer. And this is in the early 90s, and computers on construction sites just weren't there. It was thought to be computers, though nobody needs those. That was the attitude. But I brought mine out there, and I was tracking labor on a daily basis. And then we were getting our labor reports done on Friday. And so we could tell what made money and what didn't make money. What do we need to adjust? And that project ended up making the highest profit margins that company that was over 60 years old ever made. And so I figured this out. I better go start my own company. So I
There you
certainly
go.
did. Well, went out and got my own company going, and realized that managing a company is much different than being an employee. And that's a big difference there. And so went through some learning curves on that. And over the time, I've been working in the industry. And the most important part of all the projects is understanding how to manage it, deliver it to the numbers, and also develop your number base that you're trying to achieve. And so you have to have a real solid understanding of where do you have to have your baseline at. And that's where it was always focused on numbers of projects. And that's where I started to move into this cost consulting. And there was one very large engineering firm that asked me to help them. They had acquired another company, and it was a very distressed project, over $100 million. And after I looked at the project, I saw some opportunities of how to terminate a contractor for convenience and then bring in a contractor that was able to work more than one shift and accelerate the project that way. And it saved more money than it cost in overtime by savings and liquidated damages. And so those are some strategies, just always looking at thinking outside the box. Those are some elements I've done. But going to the back to the cost, as we started off here, Dave was talking about looking at the 2D and the 3D model. And that's a change that has been happening along the same lines as me bringing out my own computer. Brought out my own computer before anybody thought computers could ever be used on sites. Many of them thought, no, you don't want to use a spreadsheet. You have to write it on paper. That's the only way you can do things. And
There are still contractors that do that, by the way, that don't, have a website, or, they're still old school, and there's probably great contractors, but they're still back in the Stone Age. It's amazing. There are plenty of them out there.
Oh yeah, that's they're there. There's everybody. That's one of the slowest evolving industries because, well, no matter what, a nail still needs to be pounded. You know, you still need to
Mhm.
pound a nail, and it doesn't really change. So that's
And there's
some
no
of the
robots yet that probably, well, they probably have them, but it is what it is. I always say, look, you still need labor. You still need guys putting in screws, drywall, painting. Robots are only going to do so much. And mhm.
yeah, and that's of course where you can get into modular construction. But we've all known modular homes are more affordable than custom built homes. But it's just all a matter of what you want, and you can make custom modules. But going into the technology that has been evolving within the other industries, bringing that into the construction industry for understanding how to get your costs tied in better has some real advantages because what you have is design firms are starting to realize that when they develop things in a 3D model, they're able to coordinate their design better, and that ends up in overall project delivered with less change orders. And that just works in all industries. When you have more collaboration, things are going to be working much smoother. And that is the use of using those 3D models. Some people will talk about they use BIM and that they're bringing up a 2D or a PDF drawing up on a vertical computer screen. But that's really no difference than looking at the two-dimensional plans that we've had back since the ages of the Great Pyramids being built. It was built on in stone and on two-dimensional. They didn't have a three-dimensional, and you're just taking the plans that were on your desk and now you're putting them elevated on a screen. And so you don't have a chance to utilize all the artificial intelligence that is in the design work that goes into Revit models. And it is difficult to understand how you gather all that information, very similar to how I was gathering all the information about every labor task and activity that was done. And so that we had our labor reports on Friday rather than having it 2 weeks in the rear. By the time we got them 2 weeks in the rear, you just sat down with everybody. Okay, yep, we'll take care of that next job. But a month goes by and nobody remembers that conversation. And the next job, the same cycle happens again because the deliverable, the rate, productivity rates don't get changed. The notes just don't carry forward.
Mm-hmm.
The trades industry, it's all based upon experience and what you learn. But that's how we were able to implement changes. And that's the other item coming in with utilizing the 3D models that are developed by architects and engineers and using those for your cost estimating will deliver a more accurate cost estimate. And there's the advantages of having a more accurate cost estimate are, for one, right now with all the shortage of labor and materials, it'll allow you to deliver your project with less waste if you have an exact amount. And if you have the project understood in a high level of detail, also all the trade workers are going to be able to be more efficient on the material use that they have as well. So it's a matter of sharing all that knowledge, and it's a way that the architects and engineers have built up all this artificial intelligence within the 3D models, and it's a shame to let that go to waste. Mm-hmm. And it does take some work learning how to capture it and utilize it, but when you work, there is rewards when you get that back. And the other element is once it's developed, see yourself going farther and farther ahead all the time with those 3D models. Some of the reason we like it as well is because as we're going through and working on a project from the conceptual stage, schematic design, design development, and construction documents, and then either under change orders that happen in the future, modified plans. There's changes that need to happen to the drawings, and once we have the baseline model in place, with the technology, we can very quickly incorporate the new and define what has changed. And it's much quicker than having to start over from scratch and re-estimate the original, re-estimate the, estimate the new, and do the comparison that way. It keeps things more up to date and real current.
Sure, sure.
Because what we're doing is using the technology. It ties an ID number to an element within the drawing. And then if that element in the drawing, say it's an element that's a square, and that square is representing a floor within a room. But now if that room changes in size and the square becomes smaller, then the quantity will automatically change once we've linked it to our quantities takeoff, because it's tied by the ID number. And it is, you have to get into a lot of, it's a Revit ID or element ID number, and there's a lot of information out there, but once you learn how to manage it, you end up farther ahead.
In my next issue, I have my annual project management services and construction software listing. So I've got all these new and bells and whistles that people have created, and they say what they do, and if they're BIM applicable and so forth. And I was looking at a few of them, like, hey, that's a really cool idea, or that's really a cool idea. But when it comes down to it, when you're you're an estimator and you're in construction, just like when I did, we were talking before. I just finished my basement. My house is up for sale, and just got my offer tonight, so I'm in a really good mood out there in Coffee Talk Land. When we were doing the basement, we had gotten a contractor. Even though my wife and I were reacted as our own contractor, but we had a guy come in. Anyway, I told him, I said, "Dude, you did the best job of estimating on the sheetrock, because you wouldn't even have one piece of sheetrock left, and you did the whole basement. You just had some scraps left over. That was like the best measuring I've ever seen in my life, and you didn't even use, he might have used it, but I mean, he had the laser, he's doing, and they do it every day. But I told him, I said, that was an amazing job. I mean, you can bet, know how many gallons of primer you need. And if you do it over and over again, same thing with the floor. We knew how much laminate we needed, and I had a box maybe left over, but I told him, I said, wow, that's like the best thing I've ever seen on a drywall job, where you didn't have one sheet of drywall left. Although he could use it on another job, but still, I mean, it was just a very cool thing to see that he didn't over budget. And I'm the one paying for it. So if I don't have to pay for another sheets of drywall, I mean, was it going to kill me? No, but it was nice to see that, what, he got right down to the nitty gritty, and he didn't have one sheet left over. It was amazing. And so that whole thing with the materials on that's every penny that you can save, time, labor, material cost, all of those things, it all adds up to the bottom line when you're delivering the project. And at the end of the day, you can look at it and go, wow, look what we saved. And just like you said, the guys that you taught in the beginning, they found out how more profitable they can be by just taking the data and applying it to their everyday, activities, right?
Yes. And you're talking about drywall and gypsum wallboard. If say you have a 10-story building, 122 apartments, and then you have all your doors. So now you're going to have quite a few doors. And how do you want to take those off? Do you want to have them linked to a live model so that every number that you have, it'll show exactly where that one goes? And then that'll give you a real good opportunity to do QA, QC, because if we have that intelligence linked to the actual number, then it gives us a way to verify the quantities. Otherwise, it's a matter of you're counting, okay, you got 12 chicken scratches. Are those the right 12 chicken scratches?
Hmm.
And we don't, that doesn't get you anywhere in QA, QC. And that's part of the reason that there's always been problems because of there's the linking of quantities surveys to the actual element hasn't happened. It never used to happen because you'd highlight it on the plans, when highlighters came around, or you'd put a check mark next to it and then put a chicken scratch on a piece of paper like I described.
Hmm.
Um, then now it's changed to where, no, we don't have to use a highlighter pin anymore. Now you can use an electronic highlighter, and that's how we'll count it. Or we'll use electronic dots on a 2D drawing. But now you take that same concept. Okay, it was good that you could put the electronic dots on the plans because then you can uh, see where your numbers, the source of your numbers directly linked. But now bring that into a 3D model. And so you got the whole, every element within the project identified. And it's all within the same model. So that helps because it'll identify the changes as I talked about very accurately. And it allows you to envision where they're going and helps you think of more creative ways of delivering the projects.
And my wife and I, we're federal contractors, and we bid on all sorts of jobs. So we bid on this guy. We do bamboo removal, and this gentleman locally, he had a slope of about 30% in his backyard, and he was in the U.S. Army, and he was, in engineering and so forth. Older gentleman. Thank you for his service, Mr. Samuels. Anyway, I had to take a clinometer out. I took my son out with me, and we did the measurements. And we gave him the overview, we gave him the side view, and we took all the data points. And I was amazed because I only thought it was about a 10-foot drop, but when it was all said and done, from the back of his house to the back of the fence, it came almost to about 27 feet. And he wanted to bring in all this soil. And we told him, I said, look, you're going to have like 18 truckloads of fill that you're going to have to bring in here. You're not going to increase the price of your house. My advice is let's get rid of the bamboo, and we'll come in some liquid seed and get rid of the debris, and let's make your house. And, and then I went in further. I said, hey, are you gonna sell your house, bequeath it to your kids? No, no, I think I want to sell in a couple of years and go into live in the VA, or whatever, one of those facilities. And I said, well, look, my advice is let's get your backyard done. You can have a little fun with your grandkids, but then let's get your house and get out of here, because your other neighbors, they got the bamboo thing, and you'll be protected. But uh, you know, but it was amazing just taking the data points that we did, that we found out that I thought it was only 10, 12 feet, ended up being 27 feet. And you can sit on the back of the deck and look down, and you're trying to think about it, but it was amazing. About every 10 feet, it was about a 3-foot drop. A little rolling, but it was, and I never used the clinometer. So I went to United Reynolds. I learned how to use it, read the instructions. I took my kid. I said, hey, point it up, let's raise it. We found our benchmark, and then we went down and we did it every 10. So it was a very cool little project because I had never done it before. My family's in construction since 1888. So I come from a construction family too. And so all these things. So I was like, I always wanted to learn how to use one of those things. And now I know how to do it, but it was amazing because I only thought it was going to be this. But then when it was, I went to the guy, I said, hey, look, you really need to go this route. And data is a very cool thing because it doesn't lie. And you can actually go to a client and say, look, I was thinking it was this way, but this is what the data tells me. And this is the route that you should go. You just need to decide if you want to proceed this way or go the old way. And, data, knowledge is power. I always, the more you know, the better off you are, but you got to be, at some point, you have to be able to, to pull the trigger. Let's talk about, the pandemic, coming out of it. Obviously, depending on what state you're in, last March when it started, and now we're, 18 months into it, and we're kind of coming out of it, depending if you were a necessary, construction project, you kept on going. Others, depending on what state you're in, some projects were put on hold. But now that we're out of it, what lessons do you think you found, or just working with your clients that they've learned, that some of our listeners might, find that of interest, going through that whole process of, trying to manipulate projects, through the, the doom and gloom that you hear on the news every day during this whole thing.
Yeah, well, with the pandemic, one of the first things I mentioned to one of my clients, I said, believe it or not, nobody knows what 6 feet is. Better have them hold up their hands apart so then they can really start to realize how far apart 6 feet is. And now after a few months, that actually started to be the talk of all places. Here's what 6 feet is, getting out the tape measures for everybody, because we just don't understand what 6 feet is. And you look at your common desk, that's 5 feet across. I mean, the width of it, not the depth, is only 30 inches. And so people just don't get that concept of how far apart they have to be. But yeah, with the construction, one good part about it is that on all the construction sites, they have an accurate record of everybody that's there each and every day, so that there's a log of what the interactions are of all the people, because they always have to keep a log for the subcontractors of who their employees are. And also the general contractor has to know how many individuals each subcontractor has on the job. So that's a real good quality or a contact control chain that's in place, and it's been there for a lot of larger commercial jobs for a long time. And the principles of safety are understood real well on projects. And so once you've got it well conveyed and understood that this is needed for safety, then it will be followed through by majority of people. But no matter what, there is always the need to continually remind people of the risk that's there because of the pandemic. And there's a lot of long debates about vaccine, but I'm not going to go into that.
No. I haven't watched the news since November 3rd. The thing I found a very good thing, because I go on the line and I do my own research and I decide for myself if I believe it or not. But you know why the whole 6 feet came into being? Is because if you're closer than within 6 feet, because everything's done by their cell phone. Okay, they track you or whatever. Not that the government's doing that. I'm just saying. But the closer the people that are together, the harder it is for them to figure out where people are. And that's how the 6 feet came in. At 6 feet, it's much easier for them to find where you might be, so they can track you or trace you. And I thought that was, I just heard this last week, and it blew me away, because it was a engineer scientist, and he goes, do you know how they got with the 6 feet thing? Does anybody know how they figured that out? Because they don't have any data. They never proven anything. This is why. It goes back to the cell phones, the thing, and if you're too close, they can't find who's what. All right. So that's how 6 feet came in. Now, is it true? I don't know, but the way he explained it, it sure sounded like ABC to me. And but anyway, that's what I found out, and I thought it was just a very interesting little tidbit of what they fed. And the whole thing was, if at 6 feet, if you were out on a federal highway DOT project and you got plenty of room, you're outside, you don't have to worry about 6 feet. But if you're in, let's say, Pennsylvania, where it was locked down, and you're in a plumbing or an electrical job, and you're in a fine inline store in a mall that's getting redone, and you got 4 or 5 guys, are you going to be able to get that job done with 6 feet? No, that job's going to be hindered. So this was the whole thing that, as I was going through the pandemic, talking to architects, contractors, vendors, and building owners, retail, we were all talking about it. About how they were going to go about, what the liability was, who if someone gets sick, I mean, it was amazing, some of these conversations. The biggest thing, though, that I think that I saw over it was that with technology, just like we're here on Zoom, that people became more efficient. that they didn't, they could look at a construction site right from their desk. That meetings that took an hour in an office took 20 minutes. You didn't have all the water cooler talk, and that people actually could work out of their house. They didn't have that grind going through. I don't know what Portland traffic is these days, but in Atlanta it's brutal. You don't have to burn gas. You don't have to sit in there. You can see your kids go to school every day, and actually you're just more healthy, mentally and so forth. And that they became much more. They wanted to keep their company culture, but they became so much more efficient. And every contractor, they just say, "Oh my God, I'm booming. I just can't find people to work." Uh, we have our house. We house cleaner came in every 2 weeks because of the government. They were making more money not working than they were working. So you know what this lady, because we called her, we're like, Anne Marie, where have you been? Our house is up for sale. We gotta keep the house clean. She goes, I fired all my employees. You did what? She said, yeah, they decided to live on the government dole and they didn't want to work. And I fired them. Now that money's run out and they want to come back. She said, no, I'll find someone else. And I was like, good for you, because there's so many people that need people to work and they don't want to work, because of just things, policies that were put into place. And it was amazing. But I've seen so many companies transform themselves over the last 18 months that were so worried about this stuff, but now they let they've thrived, and they've just become much, and just about everybody's booming. The only thing that's stopping it is labor, materials, and the unknown of what's coming down the pike, which I'm not going to get into, but we all know what it is. And, but right when the pandemic hurt in February, oh my God, cranes are up, business is booming, unemployment was low. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then the pandemic came in and it stopped. And then a couple of weeks went by, and then a couple of months. And then everybody was like, how are we going to do it? But then the smart people turned on a dime and they figured things out. And those are the ones that really, really thrived. And I've learned more about I've said it before on my podcast. I've learned more about my business in the last 18 months because I went from a print face-to-face guy to a digital, basically a digital guy, both in my magazine and my events. And it's just been an amazing transformation, and taking and learning about data, and learning how to manipulate it, and see the way that data is just an amazing thing, whether it's construction or sports or what have you. There's so much you can do with it if you learn how to manipulate it and take it and be able to fine tune it and have your workers, your employees or players manipulate it so you can be that more effective or prosperous or win that game. So it's data guys I thoroughly enjoy, because I never thought I'd be a data guy. I was a circulation guy, but I'm a data guy now. So do you think with the pandemic that you became more efficient?
During the pandemic, yeah, we did separate at first, but myself, doing my own business, and since I was the only one in the office, I figured it was safer than being in my high-rise building, condominium, less people in the office building. So that's where I was. So I'll admit it here. I did that. And, but that's the one element when you're using the more advanced technology, it does depend upon having the more advanced infrastructure and the higher end computers that can, when you're working out of a home, that works for emails and general conversations like this, Zoom and all those elements. But, or if you're working in a spreadsheet or a Word document, that's fine. But the methods that we use focused on those 3D models, it requires that we have more robust equipment, and that it's all coming off of our server because we always collaborate with it. So that was a little bit of a hurdle for us to work through, but we were able to do that. But it actually, timing wise, just moving into a new office, and we spread out the workstations, and so things just happened to work for us, and that was a good thing. That's part of the reason I think that we're one of the 100 fastest growing companies in Portland, Oregon this last year, 2020.
Oh,
So
congrats.
just figured out a solution. And that's what the challenges are. It's just, there's always a solution. And that's the same with working through the COVID. It's more of an opportunity because now you have the person looking at, here's my shortage. How can I overcome this? Or what can I do in the future next time? When I first got into the industry, one element was always waiting for people to get in the shop drawings. That was always the thing that kept on getting pushed off. And then they would come to the end and then they'd say, okay, you got to rush through your review of this because I know I'm 2 weeks late. So you got to make up my 2 weeks and then I got to make it up for the vendor. But that's the same trend within the COVID here, is that from the very cusp of the project is when you have to know the project. And the way that you're going to know it in that level of detail is by understanding the 3D model. If you try to take one party to understand it all from the 2D, it's much more complex because now you're having to extract all the data manually, where if you're able to capture the 3D model, the artificial intelligence is there. You just have to know how to utilize it and put it to work for you so you're not doing all your work trying to acquire it. And the data is there and the technology is there. We just have to learn how to use it properly. And like you mentioned, going through the data, sometimes data has pros and cons because, like you say, it can be cherry picked. And cherry pick, you just find the things that you want it to go your way. It's not really taking the objective view. But when you've got to get into cost management, you got to look in the real objective standpoint to make sure you don't persuade yourself to think that it's easier or more difficult than it really is.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's just important for staying in business obviously at different elements of different business transactions. You might want to take one hand to the other there, but that's just business as a whole. It's in this industry. So the pandemic, I think it's going to be a real benefit to get people to, because now we've realized you're working on the screens, and I really hope that people are going to start to utilize the 3D models more. I see some starting to tap into it, but not a large amount of people are using the 3D models. And when we have the 3D model tied to our estimate, which is when you're looking, there's 2D, 3D, and then 4D is tying in schedule, and then 5D is tying in cost. And then the 5D has got the cost, and how you develop the cost is because you have to know your time, your labor hours associated with that. And then you're able to track your production. How much are you getting done with your labor crews? Because say if you're building a 10-story building, you can go by floor. Yes, that's one way of doing it. Summarizing it by floor, how much labor are you doing per floor? That'll get you pretty close for them. But if now you're trying to bring in multiple other trades, it becomes more complex the more trades you bring in, and trying to track the production of every single trade. And having the cost linked to a 3D model allows you to, enables that tracking of that to be much easier. And in large industrial projects, understanding the earned value approach is very important for working on monthly payments, because if you have a $50 million monthly payment, you're going to want to make sure that that work's actually delivered. And so there's times where the data is utilizing it is really important for the end user. So it's not going to waste. And
if you were going to leave our commercial construction coffee talk visitors out there, listeners, one phrase or positive thought as we go into the fourth quarter of 2021 and we close the books out on this year, what would it be?
well, I think the best thing is that we've gotten through this pandemic, and it's going to be getting better and better every year going forward. There's a lot of work out there, and we've got the knowledge and understanding on how to deliver it, and we know how to work together, and we definitely know how to work apart. Be good seeing everybody come back together and making the country grow.
All right, I'm all for that. Listen, I'm like I said, I was a face-to-face guy. Now I'm digital. I miss all my buds. Do I miss getting on a flight? No, but I'd like to see them. So it's getting back to normal. I'm all for it. It'd be really nice to see it, and I know that there's a solution out there. It's just a waiting game to see how this all is all going to unfold. So, John, if someone wanted to reach out to you with questions or wanted to find out more about, modeling, et cetera, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to our website, which is www.jldllc.com, or send me a direct email, which is John, John, at jldllc.com. And then last but not least is our phone number, 503-675-4383. Be a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah. For those of you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me at davidc@ccr-mag.com. If you're not a subscriber, we'd love to have you up on our toolbar at ccr-mag.com. There's a button up on the homepage, subscribe, hit it. We'll add you to it. For those of you haven't seen the magazine, this is one of my last issues. This was a project up in Nashville that we did. JLD was the PM on it. And we put these out every month. I think this issue was 140 pages. I've got White Castle coming up with their 100th anniversary on my next cover that should be posting here at the end of the week. And it's like playing the lottery. I know you've heard some of you out there before. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. If you don't send me something, I can't look for it. So if you have some cool projects or personnel announcements or new products or any of that kind of stuff, send it to me. We'll find it. It's very tough getting in the magazine, but we've got our homepage, Facebook, Twitter. We look at everything. So we just had another almost 2.5 million people hit our website. I've got 16,000 pages of content on there, and it grows every month. So send me something, we'll find it, and you never know what might end up in ink. So we'd love to have you. So John, thank you so much for finding the time to talk about modeling, costs, and so forth. Hopefully I'll get to meet you here someday in person. It's been a while. Actually, we did a cocktail party up in Portland a couple years back. So it's been a while since I've been up in the Northwest. Beautiful city. And, but right now I'm not traveling. So it is what it is. But, like everybody else, I say, hey, I'd love to see you in person. So hopefully I'll get to meet you in person someday. But we really appreciate you giving up your knowledge. And anybody out there, if you want to talk modeling, give John a call. He's an expert. That's why we have these types of people on here, so they can help you become more efficient with your projects, try new things. And, you never know what much you'll learn. The day I stop learning is the day I should go do something else. So that's kind of my repertoire. And, never quit and learn from your mistakes. The sun's always going to get up tomorrow, and tomorrow's another day. So with that said, John, say goodnight from Portland, Oregon, up in the Northwest in the United States. John?
All right. Well, thank you. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and have a good cup of coffee later on, right?
Yeah. And
right.
I'm going to say goodnight from Suwanee, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, right below the Beaufort Dam on Lake Lanier. And everybody, enjoy the rest of the summer. You got October, Halloween coming up. Before you know it, it's Thanksgiving, and the holidays are going to be here, and we're going to close this year out, and then boom, it's all going to start over again. So everybody, remember, wash your hands, don't touch your face, make sure your surroundings, you're going to be okay. All right. So John, thanks once again. Everybody out there in Commercial Construction Coffee Talk, thanks for chiming in, and we will see you next time on another episode. And John, thanks. You're awesome. We'll talk to you. All right.
Thank you, David.
You bet, man. See y'all later. Have a great rest of the week.